It began on an ordinary night. The kind of night when the mundane disguises the extraordinary or the horrifying. Mia, a quiet, unassuming woman in her late 20s, was settling into her small, cluttered apartment. Books were stacked haphazardly on the shelves. Half-empty cups of tea littered the desk, and a faint flicker from the living room lamp gave the space an uneasy warmth. She was alone, or at least, she thought she was. Mia had always been a night owl. Tonight her insomnia had drawn her to the old dusty trunk, tucked away in the corner of her bedroom. It had been her grandmother's, a relic of a long time ago. The leather was cracked, the hinges rusted, and the smell of mildew clung to it like an unwelcome memory. Inside, she found the usual assortment of trinkets, faded photographs, brittle letters tied with string, and a delicate lace handkerchief. But beneath them all was something unusual. A small, ornate mirror, its silver frame adorned with intricate carvings of twisted vines and staring eyes. At first, it seemed unremarkable, just a mirror. But as Mia lifted it, she felt an inexplicable chill, as though the air around her had dropped several degrees. She brushed it off. The apartment's drafty, she thought. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was watching her. Mia's hand froze. She glanced around the room. "Hello?" she called, her voice wavering. The only response was the steady rhythm of the rain and the low hum of her refrigerator. She laughed nervously, placing the mirror on her bedside. "I'm just tired," she muttered. But that night, she didn't sleep. The following day, Mia couldn't shake the unease. The mirror seemed to demand her attention. Every time she glanced at it, she felt a strange pull, as though it wanted her to look deeper. She told herself it was silly. It was just a mirror. By evening, the rain had stopped, leaving the city wrapped in a damp, eerie silence. Mia sat on her bed, the mirror resting on her lap. She stared into it, her reflection staring back, and then she noticed it. Her reflection blinked, but Mia hadn't. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she leaned closer. Her reflection mimicked her movements perfectly, except for its eyes. They were too wide, too alert, as though the figure in the mirror was waiting for something. She shut her eyes tightly, whispering to herself, "It's just my imagination. It's just my imagination." But when she opened them, her reflection was smiling. Mia shoved the mirror back into the trunk and slammed the lid shut. "I'm done," she said aloud, as though saying it could make it true. She spent the rest of her evening trying to distract herself. She cleaned, she cooked, she watched mindless television. But no matter what she did, she felt the weight of the trunk in her bedroom, felt the presence of the mirror inside of it. Around midnight, she heard it. She froze. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. It was coming from inside the trunk. Gathering her courage, Mia crept into the bedroom. The tapping stopped the moment she entered. The silence was deafening. She stood there, staring at the trunk, willing herself to ignore it. But then, the lid began to lift slowly, on its own, and from within, she heard a voice. "Let me out." Mia bolted from the apartment, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She didn't stop until she reached the street, where the harsh glow of the streetlight felt like a sanctuary. She called a friend, begged to stay over. They didn't ask any questions. They could hear the terror in her voice. But even in her friend's apartment, Mia couldn't escape. She dreamt of the mirror that night, its frame twisting and writhing, the eyes carved into it blinking, watching. Her reflection reached out to her, its hand pressing against the glass until the surface rippled like water. "Come closer," it whispered. Mia woke up screaming. The next morning, she decided to get rid of it. She returned to her apartment, determined to throw the mirror away. But when she opened the trunk, it was gone. Mia tore through her apartment, panic rising. And then she saw it. The mirror was on the wall, hanging as though it has always been there. Her reflection smiled at her again, wider this time, its eyes dark and hollow. "You can't get rid of me," it said. Mia's terrified breathing intensified. The last thing she saw before the world went black was her reflection reaching out, shattering the glass between them. Weeks later, Mia's friends reported her missing. Her apartment was untouched. Everything in its place. Everything except the mirror. It hung on the wall, pristine and unassuming, waiting for its next owner. And somewhere, deep within the silvered glass, a faint figure could be seen, screaming silently, trapped forever.